Most students who want a 175 plus LSAT score think it's all about intelligence, cramming, or using the perfect prep materials. But there's one often overlooked mistake that separates the 160 scorers from the 175 plus scorers. So if you find yourself taking endless practice tests, memorizing fancy strategies, and still feeling stuck, this one's for you. Today, I'm about to reveal the single biggest mistake you're making and exactly how to fix it so you can finally break into that 175 plus range. First, for those who don't know me, my name is Steve Schwartz. I've been teaching the LSAT since 2005, and I personally increased my own LSAT score from a 152 to a 175. Now let's talk about why most people plateau in the 160s or low 170s. Students often blame it on everything but themselves. They'll say, I need more advanced question drills, or I just don't have enough time to study, or I'm not a naturally good test taker. These factors, of course, might play a small role, but they're not the true reason you're hitting a wall. The reality is, the LSAT is a skills-based exam. It tests your ability to read critically, reason logically, and think under pressure. Mastering these skills doesn't require a 200 IQ or a 10-hour daily study grind. It just requires a strong foundation built on top of rock-solid fundamentals. Now, here's the number one mistake: not fully mastering the fundamentals before moving on to advanced strategies. Most students treat the LSAT like it's a sprint. They jump straight into full-length practice tests, advanced formal logic, and time pressure drills before they've actually nailed the core skills. It's like trying to run a marathon without ever having jogged a single mile consistently. And imagine trying to solve a complex math problem, but you never really learned basic algebra. You might memorize a few shortcuts or rely on guesswork, but you'll always struggle. The LSAT is no different. If you're not crystal clear on how to break down arguments, how to handle conditionals, and how to read in passages efficiently, no amount of test-taking strategy will save you. What does mastering the fundamentals look like on the LSAT? It means understanding how to read actively, marking down structure, main points, and nuances. It means how to ID conclusion versus premises in logical reasoning. It means you know how to handle conditional statements, contrapositives, and common argument patterns. It means knowing how to approach each question type in logical reasoning with a structured framework. And so if any of these points sound fuzzy to you, that's your first indication you might be making the number one biggest mistake. Now, if you don't fix this fundamental problem, you'll stay stuck at the same score no matter how many tricks or shortcuts you try to learn. You'll keep taking full practice tests and keep wondering why your score hasn't improved. You might put in 5, 10, even 20 hours a week, but because you're building on a shaky foundation, every new layer just makes your study process more confusing. But if you do fix it, everything becomes easier. You'll see the reasoning behind each question. You'll notice patterns in the exam that repeat over and over, and you'll find your confidence surging. You'll get more questions right while studying less because every minute of study time becomes more meaningful. Now, I'll never forget the days back when I was in LSAT prep mode myself. I plateaued in the mid-160s and couldn't figure out why. I was convinced I just needed more practice tests, so I took 5 full exams in 2 weeks, but my scores didn't budge. Finally, a friend of mine sat me down and asked, how comfortable are you with the logic fundamentals like conditional reasoning, common flaw types, or reading for structure in reading count passages? And I realized I couldn't confidently explain half of them, and that was a major wake-up call. So I put aside the practice tests and spent a few weeks relearning the basics. I went through each flaw type until I could teach it to someone else. I practiced conditional statements until it felt like second nature. And guess what? My next practice test jumped from 166 to 172, and a few weeks later, I scored a 176 on yet another practice test. That's the power of mastering the fundamentals. Let me share another example. Sarah was a student of mine who'd previously taken a major prep course, done every homework assignment, and taken at least 15 full-length practice tests. Her score sat stubbornly at 168. She came to me frustrated and ready to give up on her 175 plus dream. So I asked her about her approach to logical reasoning. She said she understood it well enough, So I gave her a quick quiz on basic argument types like necessary versus sufficient assumption, causal arguments, and sampling flaws. She struggled to articulate the differences, and we discovered she'd been mixing up necessary and sufficient assumption questions half the time. So we focused the next 2 weeks on just one thing: clarifying basic logical reasoning arguments, question types, and the role of premises versus conclusions. We did short sets of 10 questions each day, drilling down on each question type methodically. It wasn't glamorous, and it definitely wasn't advanced. But guess what happened when she retook a practice test after those 2 weeks? She scored a 174, and a month later, she reached a 177. Now, when you shore up your fundamentals, you'll see fewer silly mistakes because you'll spot trap answers that hinge on a small logical nuance because you understand the nuance. You'll read faster because once you can recognize structural clues and transitional words, your reading time decreases dramatically. You'll have confidence under pressure because you know you have a solid foundation, so you won't panic when you see a tricky question. You'll also have better stamina because mental fatigue often comes from second guessing yourself. But when the fundamentals are solid, you're more certain of your answers, which preserves your mental energy for later sections. So to make this super actionable for you, here are 3 pillars you need to lock down. First, logical reasoning mastery. Learn to ID premises and conclusions instantly. Practice different question types in isolation, necessary assumption, flaw, strengthen, weaken inference, and understand the unique logic each one requires. Also, revisit conditional statements until you can write contrapositives in your sleep. Pillar 2, reading comprehension mastery. Read for structure, not just details. You're looking for the main point, tone, and transitions between ideas. Summarize each paragraph in just a few words because this keeps you from getting lost in the weeds. Also, learn how to quickly ID viewpoints, especially when multiple perspectives are involved. Pillar 3, the Socratic review method. After every set of questions, thoroughly review. Write down what question type was this, what was the reasoning, why was the right answer correct, and why were the wrong answers wrong. Invest more time in reviewing mistakes than you do in actually solving new questions because that's where the real learning happens. And if you'd like my help engaging in that Socratic review method, applying it to your own studying on your journey to 170 plus, my team and I would be glad to help you out. You could check out the links below to find out more and to book a call with me and my team. Now, here's a straightforward 5-step process for shoring up your fundamentals. Step 1, diagnose. Step 2, focus. Step 3, drill. Step 4, integrate. And step 5, reflect and adapt. Diagnosing is when you take a step back and look at your recent performance. Which areas do you consistently struggle with, and which question types trip you up the most? Is your biggest issue in reading comp or logical reasoning? Most people think they know where they're weak, but they haven't actually reviewed the data methodically. Step 2 is to focus. Pick one skill area at a time. If it's logical reasoning, focus on a particular type like necessary assumption questions, but don't jump around. Spend a set period, say a week, immersing yourself in that question type or skill set. That could mean reviewing lessons, doing short drills, or reviewing meticulously. Step 3 is to go out and drill. Do a problem set of 10 to 15 questions of that same type. Do them untimed at first, focusing on the clarity of your reasoning, then gradually introduce timing once you're hitting 70-80% accuracy. But don't just check the right answer. Dig into why you chose the wrong answer and ID the trap or gap in your logic using a strategy like the Socratic review method. Now, step 4 is to integrate. Once you're strong in one area, move on to the next area. Over time, you'll start mixing up question types again to train for the actual test day. And periodically, take practice tests to gauge your progress. But don't rely solely on these tests to improve. They're more for checking in than for learning. Now, step 5, reflect and adapt. Keep a journal where you note repeated mistakes or patterns in your reasoning. If you see that certain flaw types consistently catch you off guard, go back and do another round of targeted drilling, or this might be a point where you introduce private one-on-one coaching to get some expert guidance on what you're getting wrong and why, so that you can avoid making the same mistake again, especially so if you have limited time until your LSAT test date. So if you're thinking, I only have a month left till my LSAT, there's no time to step back. The thing is, stepping back to shore up your fundamentals can be the fastest route to a score jump if you get the right kind of support. But if you keep forging ahead on shaky ground, you'll keep making the same mistake. So even just a week or two of targeted fundamentals-focused review or coaching can yield a major return on investment. Or maybe you're thinking, I just got to do more practice tests. But if practice tests alone were the key, you would already have your dream score. They just reveal your scores, they don't raise it. Drilling fundamentals, though, does. Now here's another case study from one of my students, David. David was a classic example of a high achiever stuck in the low 170s. He'd done almost everything, classes, practice tests, courses, but he couldn't break past 172. But when he came to me, we looked at his analytics and found he was consistently missing 2 to 3 questions on conditional reasoning and logical reasoning. He understood the concept on paper, but got flustered under time pressure. So the fix that we applied for him was 2 weeks of daily conditional logic drills, no more full-length tests. Through this process, he built the muscle memory to translate statements into logic chains instantly. His next practice test was a 176, and a few weeks later, he scored a 179 on the real LSAT. That's the power of locking down the basics. So if you're serious about hitting a 175 plus, then what you want to do starting today is first, pinpoint your weakest link. Use your practice tests or your notes to see which section or question type consistently drags down your score. Then, spend at least a week on the fundamentals. Block out time to watch or read foundational lessons, work through drills slowly and methodically. Then, track your daily progress. Write down your accuracy per question type each day and watch for trends. If you're improving, that's great, but if not, look at why not, and only reintroduce full-length exams after you see a noticeable increase in your section level or question type accuracy. So here's a big takeaway for you from this video. Chasing advanced strategies and memorizing shortcuts might be tempting, but without a solid base, you'll never see the massive leaps in your score. The student who methodically builds their fundamentals is the one who breaks the 175 barrier, while everyone else is left stuck wondering what went wrong. So if you feel like you've been spinning your wheels, this is your wake-up call. Step back, reevaluate, and commit to mastering the fundamentals, whether it's argument structure or reading comp technique. Yes, it will take discipline and patience, but that's the only way to truly unlock top LSAT scores. And if you'd like my help getting that top LSAT score, you could check out the links below to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. And in the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.